So with that, we will move right into our panel discussion. So a little bit about the story of plastics. Hopefully everybody was able to watch it, but if not, it was a documentary, a film that takes a sweeping look at the man-made crisis of plastic pollution and the worldwide effects it has on our health of our planet and the people who inhabit it. Spanning 3 continents, the film illustrates the ongoing catastrophe: fields full of garbage, mountains of trash, rivers clogged with waste, and skies choked with emissions from plastic production and processing. The film distills a complex problem that is increasingly affecting the planet and its residents' well-being. So I will introduce our, let's see if they're all here. We're missing Jeanette, but she said she would be late. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce her, and hopefully she'll be along. So I'll start with her, Jeanette Gayer. She is the State Director of Environment Georgia. As director, Jeanette coordinates policy development, research, outreach, and legislative advocacy. She has ran successful campaigns to designate Georgia's first outstanding national resource water along the headwaters of the Consaga River, expand parks along the Chattahoochee River and Jekyll Island State Park, and stop construction of 3 new coal power plants in Georgia, while also advocating for solar policies that have helped make Georgia one of the top 10 states for solar in the country. Hermina Glass-Hill is with us. She is the Georgia field representative for Oceana. Oceana campaigns for policies at the international, national, state, and local level to reduce ocean plastic pollution by reducing the amount of single-use plastic being produced at the source. Their plastic campaigns do just that in strategic coastal countries that produce more than 30% of the world's plastic waste. Oceana campaigns in 8 countries and the European Union to achieve meaningful reduction in ocean plastic pollution by reducing the production and use of throwaway plastics. We have Don Bates, who is the founder of Osprey Initiative, a company that aims to bridge the gap between intent and action in the sustainable world by bringing and implementing realistic solutions to their clients, partners, and communities. He has developed a low-cost, low-maintenance device that could be installed and moved easily. The device is designated to be low impact and able to be tactically placed and intercept litter at the source. And we'll be working with Don with our 2 new litter traps for the Vernon project. And last but not least, our very own Mel Sparrow, who we've already met, who is our education and outreach coordinator. She organizes our educational events and spearheads ORK's litter trap program in Statesboro. Don't Litter Lots works with municipal authorities and volunteers to catch litter before it reaches the Canoochee and Ogeechee rivers. So welcome, panel. Is there anything any of you want to add to your introduction that I may have missed? Please feel free.
Well, thank you for that great introduction, Damon. I'm really grateful and honored to be here.
Welcome.
Yeah, we really love working with the Riverkeeper organizations. We kind of consider that as a litmus test for the simplistic work we do, but to have the support of these groups that have kind of led the charge to get us where we are today, it's always kind of rewarding for us to be asked to speak, because we really know the level of work that went on, you know, where the Riverkeeper started and where we are today. I don't think we could be where we are nationally, Clean Water Act, everything, you know, without some of that work that's been done across the country. So
thank you. So we'll go ahead and open up for questions. If you have a question about the movie for any of our panelists, please go ahead and start putting those in the chat. And I will start the process. So Ogeechee Riverkeeper, like many other watershed groups, we tend to fight plastic pollution through cleanups, litter traps, and anti-littering campaigns. And these tactics are good, and they prevent a lot of plastic pollution from entering our waterways. But as the film highlights, the plastic problem will never be solved this way. One of my favorite quotes from the movie, not necessarily favorite, but ones that really kind of stuck with me is cleanups are really just the best way to see how big the problem is. Broader solutions are needed. So with that said, you know, we're a watershed group. We work at the local level, but we have Hermina here who works for an international organization. And so my first question is to her, since you guys work at all levels, federal, international, are there some examples of policies or ongoing campaigns that you would like to share that are addressing plastics pollution at a broader scale?
Sure. Thank you for that question. It's a great question. As you stated, the plastic pollution crisis is so pervasive, as illustrated in the film. One of the campaigns, global campaigns that Oceana is working with, and it happens to be a bill here in our United States Congress, and that is the Break Free from Plastic movement. The Break Free from Plastic movement is really about this real global comprehensive approach to ending plastic pollution at the source, from its entire life cycle, from extraction to production, manufacturing. And, we find the remnants of plastic in almost every segment of our lives. So Oceana has been really involved in a global campaign to break free from plastic in all of the countries that you've named. So that's a really big start from a global perspective for us.
All right, and now we have Jeanette just joining us just on cue. Well, welcome, Jeanette. I know you're double booked tonight, so thanks for coming in. Or if you're ready for questions, give me a thumbs up. If not, I'll move on and we'll come back. The first question was kind of direct. I intended to direct toward you and Hermina, if you're ready. Go ahead, Ann, you had a question?
Damon, we have a question that maybe you could do as a placeholder while Jeanette's getting, welcome, Jeanette. Thank you for joining us. Mm-hmm. We have a question from a former board member, Jamie Smith Parkins.
Okay.
She wants to ask, what can we do now to put pressure on the petrochemical companies? Does it disincentivize, I just lost it. Disincentivize fossil fuel processing for plastic production? That's the first question. And then the follow-up, how do we influence stopping those subsidies that aid the plastic production? Maybe that'll give us a minute.
All right, well, who wants to take a stab at that?
I mean, I can get a little bit with it. I think we attack things from an individual basis, and I really appreciate some of the folks here that look at things bigger. But I think COVID showed a lot that a lot of materials were only delivered through single-use plastics, and so I think we have to keep working with alternatives, and I think it's smart. I don't think we can stop it. And then we always deal in this country that that we can really anywhere in this country except for Flint, Michigan, you can turn your tap on and have safe drinking, clean water. And that's just not the world. And so I think it's a longer term approach that we really have to help with the infrastructure of the world and what that looks like. And it's just such a volume of people right now. We see it in our world. We can go to pristine places and there's just not the people. There's like, oh, Colorado's so nice in the mountains because there's no litter. Yeah, because there's nobody. And we see, especially in some of our urban areas, it's a population density from the data that we collect. It's not like this poor community is bigger litterers. It's just they live in a much denser environment. More people equal more litter. And I think that's a community that really gets an unwarranted share of the blame. But, you live in a nice gated community with a yard man and a maid, you're probably not going to have a litter issue because you have 4 people living on 4 acres. In the same urban neighborhood, you may literally have 1,000 people living in that same footprint. So I think, adding to the discussion as we talk about some of these big picture items, the effect, the tax on the poorer folks, that the cost increase with some of this has got to be factored into the long-term decisions and what we're doing.
All right. And to that note, I know there's some there's some new initiatives to have biodegradable plastics, and there's a new place in Georgia called Danimer Scientific that it is going down that road. And a lot of people think that might be kind of a solution to some of the issue, but it's multifaceted and lots of different issues. And really complex to address. So you have the supply chain and the source, but then you also have the disposal, and it's really hard to kind of get at a full picture of the issue. So Jeanette, thank you for joining us. I know Environment Georgia and your collaborators around the nation have been doing a lot of work around plastic. And I kind of started out by saying, a lot of watershed groups like us, we focus on cleanups and litter traps and recycling, but it's a much bigger issue than just that. We're not going to solve this by cleanups. And so, are there any policy issues that you guys have been working on that you want to highlight? And to that note, I know just this week alone, you personally have kind of spearheaded a new issue in Georgia where this huge, I think the largest in the nation or either the country, recycling plant is being proposed. And there was a bond hearing this week for $500 million, $500 million in tax breaks to build this. So, I'm really interested to hear a little more about that and the problems with it. From my understanding, this recycling plant is going to take plastic and turn it into diesel fuel, which is just going to add to the climate change component of plastics. So it's not necessarily a solution to that issue. So do you want to speak a moment about the initiatives and things that you guys have been doing? And then I want to, I think everybody's interested to hear a little more about the emerging issue in Georgia with this recycling plant and what can be done about that.
Yeah. Okay. You set me up really well. First of all, can you hear me before I talk for 10 minutes? Okay. Yeah. And apologies for joining late. Thatcher mentioned that I double booked myself. I also volunteer on the board of the Georgia Solar Energy Association, and we had an event tonight, so I apologize. Hopefully Hermina has said something to the effect of, we cannot recycle our way out of our single-use problem, which is, the core of, I think, a lot of the way that we sort of approach this problem. Damon, you were talking about cleanups. I think that's one of the things that certainly needs to happen. But I also think that policy is a great way to attack this problem. So there's a couple different policies that we look at and are pursuing and think are actually possible to make happen in Georgia right now. One of them is, we've been doing a lot of work with cities around the state to implement municipal level bans on single-use plastic. So it's not like you are banning plastic bags and in the entire city. You are working with the local government to say, we're going to stop buying plastic forks, plastic plates, styrofoam containers in all of our facilities, and really lead by example. So it's a great way to kind of ease into this issue, I think, for local governments that might be a little bit leery. But if you've got activists that are interested in taking this on, I think that's a great place to start. The most recent city to do this is Savannah. So they've got a resolution that passed that basically put them on a path towards banning single-use plastics. City of Atlanta, Fulton County, there's probably 6 or 7 cities that have now taken this action. So I think that's a great place to start. And I think that from the ground up is definitely the way that we are going to see success. The next thing is maybe what I would call just stopping really bad ideas, which is what you started to reference when you were talking about what we call chemical recycling, quote unquote, chemical recycling facility. I'm making air quotes if you can't see me. These facilities, and there are not that many of them, they're very unproven. So there's only one other facility that I know of that has actually been permitted and is successfully, actually not successfully really, but is actually up and running in not in Georgia, in Indiana. They take plastics that are very hard to recycle, and they heat them at a very high temperature and add some chemicals to that process and then turn them into something new. And the most likely thing that they will turn them into is fossil fuels. So one of the things that we like to say is it's basically you're taking fossil fuels for a very short time. That fossil fuel is disguised as a plastic, and then you're turning it back into a fossil fuel where it will probably be burned to create climate pollution. So every step along the way, you are creating more pollution, air pollution, water pollution, global warming pollution. And as I said, these facilities have not been proven to be effective or really work. That's problem number one. Problem number two is they pollute. And then problem number three is they are creating a demand for a waste stream that we really say you should be eliminating. So why are you going to set up a system that actually incentivizes people to create, single-use plastics and throw them away? They just this week had a hearing on those bonds that Damon mentioned, $500 million of revenue bonds being issued by the Make and Bib Downtown Development Authority. There were, I think, 30 people that spoke at that meeting. It was a public hearing. One person spoke in favor of the facility. Everyone else spoke in opposition. So I think this facility has a long way to go. I'm going to post in the chat the Development Authority. They're taking comments on this right now. So would urge everyone on the call to send an email to the Development Authority saying you think this is a backward way of doing things. I'll post that in the chat and urge folks to comment. But I think we have a long road to haul. If you look at kind of who are the people that are behind this, a lot of them are the people in power in Macon. So I think we've got good activists on our side, but then are up against sort of the powers that be in the community.
Thank you for the update on that. And I've been curious to learn a little more about it. And what we're going to do, we'll put that in the chat, Jeanette, but we're going to send an email to everybody after the fact with action items and ways they can get involved. And we'll make sure that's in there. Right. Jeanette mentioned a couple of things that I want to bring back up. I want to start with this recycling aspect. I know recycling was supposed to be our savior for plastic pollution, and it hadn't turned out to be that way. Mass recycling. And before we got started, I was talking to Don. Don was talking about single stream and the issues with that. And I think, Don's definitely, they've embraced recycling in their business and have partnered with people and companies that are doing some more unique type stuff. And same thing with Mel in Statesboro with our Don't Litter. Lots program. So after they do a cleanup, they take everything out that can be recycled, and there's a local small business there that's taking these things that he can recycle and doing things with that. So let's have a little brief discussion about even in the movie, recycling is part of the solution, but it's definitely not the holy grail that everybody had hoped one day it would be. So I'd like to hear a little more about, what we're doing locally and what Don is doing to be creative to find solutions to the, trying to ship this stuff, to China and that sort of stuff. So Mel, let's give you a chance to get in the conversation and talk a little bit about, I think it's Borough Recycling is taking our recycling in Statesboro, and talk to us a little bit about what they're doing with the recyclables.
Sure. So they actually used to be called Borough Recycling, and I think you can still find them on Google that way, but they're transitioning to Green Rock Recycling. And I hope that means that they're branching outside of just Bullitt County, because it's such a unique opportunity. I wish that more places had access to companies like this. So they take a certain amount of recyclables and melt it down into aggregate material to use as landscaping and hardscaping. So they actually look like little pebbles or little rocks that you might see in front of buildings around town. If you are ever in Statesboro and you're over by Panera Bread, right across the street, there is a building called Bullock Solutions, and they have a great example. I tell everybody to go there. Like, go look at their rocks. They're not actually rocks. It's all the materials melted down. So obviously, because they melt things down into aggregate, they can't take paper and cardboard. So that's one downside to it. But they are able to take even plastic bags. So like, you know, your grocery bags, as well as like food wrappers, as long as the items are clean. And then they also take styrofoam, metal, tin, glass, and plastics with the recycle symbol on them. So he takes a great deal. And I'm sure there are other companies around, you know, the country and the world that do similar things to this. I'm not as familiar with them, but this is a really great thing that we have access to here in Bullock County.
Interesting. I always wonder about, you know, air pollution when people start melting and doing that.
I haven't been to his facility yet, but we're going to take a tour of it sometime, hopefully soon. The delay there has been because of COVID, but it's located in Brooklet.
Okay. All right. We'll definitely do some further investigations on what this guy's doing and get to the gritty on really the impact and how it affects our environment. So Don has a little different perspective than most of us, I think, on recycling and the plastic industry in general, and that's one reason we invited him here is to have some diversity of opinion. And so Don, why don't you talk a little bit about your organization real quick to catch everybody up with what you do. And you specialize in litter collection, but I know you guys work with some recyclers and
right.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Yeah. So big picture, give you the cliff notes is 3 years ago, I was an executive vice president for a 300-person engineering company. I'm a registered geologist by background because I can't do math, so I couldn't be an engineer. Calculus hurt me, but and so ran, and I was a chief operating officer for that engineering company. And so went from a geologist to the management side. So came in to started my career kind of at the tail end of really seeing the impact of the Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act, of the good side of it. Gas stations were becoming compliant. So I'm very positive about where we've come as a country from in some of our environmental areas, from being just so reactive to proactive and starting to see the beginning of sustainability. I think from a litter standpoint, we're still barely reactive, and so our passion is making urban waters and waters nice. And the river keepers have done such a great job on true water quality, I think, in a lot of their watersheds. But if you can't get past the aesthetics of litter, and to be honest with you, most of that litter is not affecting water quality yet because it's so recent. You had to do something with the litter. And so I came up with a little small device to get closer to the source instead of the $150,000, $250,000 traps. Can we just go attack the litter with some labor, hit your hip boots on, but do it as a business instead of swamping your volunteers? And so came up with a concept on the side 5 years ago. I'd go out there and clean my trap out in the morning in my tie, my suit, and hip boots before I went to a board meeting, and was able to start my business and then quit my day job 3 years ago. And so from that little trap, we have now working in 9 or 10 states, probably be 12 by the end of February, kind of building tactical solutions to protecting that water in those communities, and have started a project with Ogeechee, and already has now turned in. We've met with Savannah. We're looking like we're going to maintain one of the booms for the city, finding those gaps in it. And so we just love being in the water. And we want kids, hopefully everybody on this call had a ditch or a creek or a pond that meant something to them growing up. I think that's probably why we're all here. And our job, it's so rewarding when we can go into some of these communities that people have said that water is horrible, and we can meet the grandmother and talk about how good it looks now, and that she doesn't mind her kids chasing crawfish in that creek. That's what we do, why we do, and that's the vision and focus. we didn't start off thinking about recycling. That was really nothing we were in our world. But as we're cleaning these creeks up, especially the legacy litter, we break our litter down into 3 types, from pristine, what we consider curbside, to kind of a mid-grade, to really degraded material. We want to say, what can we do to recycle and not, what can we divert from a landfill? So it wasn't just, it's really anything we find. If we can, because we already touch it piece by piece, if we can sort it in the field and divert it from landfilling or whatever, that's really where all of this started for us. So, we actually get a lot of the treated wood. Most of us live on the coastal areas. These hurricanes come through, and you might be dealing with 40-year-old treated wood. It's beautiful, but it's treated. It has to go to a landfill. And so we started just grabbing it, and we're making tables and putting hairpin legs on it and selling it. And it's beautiful stuff. It's all the shelves in our office. And so all this kind of started, we came up with some specialty agreements with Indorama, which is probably one of the largest bottle recyclers in the country. They recycle 400,000 pounds a day. Most of their pellets are going to the carpet industry. That's really dominating the purchase of recycled number one, PET right now. And I called the guy, because every MRF we were going to said, we can't take that, it's too dirty, because of the contamination issues. And when China stopped, it really kind of we had gotten very lazy in our recycling. And so this stuff was all contaminated. So we actually met with folks from Indorama. They said, we can take that. So we go and get select MRFs that let us say that, and we're able to actually recycle. So right now, about 30% of what we get out of the water is diverted from a landfill, and we're actually bringing a glass crusher in. We're going to start crushing glass in our shop and just using it for aggregate for whoever wants it. And we're testing some concrete. There's some issues with the fly ash and the glass process of building long-term concrete, worrying about structural issues. And so we're actually testing it right now. And so what we're all about is being very specific. So if there's a specific item that we catch in enough of a volume that we can move up the chain and divert it from landfilling, that's what we concentrate on. So we, at this point, only, we get aluminum, we get, number one plastic bottles, which is the only number one they want. If you're recycling your clamshells from your strawberries or whatever, those are not recyclable. That's getting lumped into the 3 through 7 garbage at 1 cent a pound compared to the 25 cents a pound that single-use bottles are getting. So that has to be done. Any cool wood, tires, we have a facility that takes tires. We're really excited about the glass component because we think glass needs to be recycled locally because of the weight of the material. You're burning more carbon to haul it. In our market, it ends up in Atlanta and they don't even want it. But what's so cool about glass, and so being specific about what your recycling is happening, it's very neat in North Arkansas, Missouri, and Western Missouri. Owens Corning Fiberglass actually has a mill up there. And so they actually do acquire all of the local glass in that area, and it goes back into fiberglass. And so those are the neat things to me that are happening if that material's there. But anything you can do, we are a big fan of reducing. We think the best decision, and I know the movie talked about consumerism isn't the answer, but we're only going to increase. And if we can all concentrate on our footprint and do more, we do think that is a part of the solution, a big part of it. I'm staying at the True Hiltons. Now we decided if there's a True by Hilton available, we're going to stay there because they're using the refillable shampoo bottles in the shower. And now people go, well, it's COVID. We can't do that. I'll take my risk with COVID. I don't need a lot of shampoo. I'll squeeze the little bottle out. So, I think being specific about it, Damon, and me and you and Mel have met me, I'm not very bashful. I think Facebook activism is really, there's just so much misinformation. And I think our biggest piece is educating yourself on the specificity of your market and what's right. And please follow the rules. The biggest issue we're seeing, regardless of the big picture of recycling, is just contamination. People see a triangle on the bottom of a piece of styrofoam and they're putting it in their recycling, even though they're MRF saying, we do not want that material. Do not send it. And it's not fair to the county or the city to send them this bag of garbage that's 50% good, 50% bad,
the labor it takes to sort that, it's not fair to the taxpayer. So I think one of our best bets is just really being honest. And, my wife was doing the little, a toothbrush, trying to recycle it, and that stuff just becomes litter. So we have some rules we use internally. If it's not bigger than your fist, it doesn't need to be in the recycle bin. And, so little things like that, being positive, but we are all about whatever it's use the items that have the least input, the least impact going forward, whatever those are. And some markets, we feel that single-use plastic is more recyclable than glass because of the condition of the glass, but we're not against the glass either. And we may figure that out and it changes. So educating yourself on what works in your community, but anytime you can reduce what you're using, you're helping.
All right, thanks for that. And yeah, personal responsibility, changing our behavior is a key. Recycling is one. Policy is going to be another huge one. We have a question from Sean. I want to direct this to Hermina. If the message is needed for systematic change in creating a more sustainable and equitable world, what is the education outreach efforts in less developed countries, and what can be done to stop the lobbying to politicians who also have a hand in the fossil fuels?
That's a really good question and a big question. In less developed countries, education, like Don said, education and outreach is an important part of that. But you have to get down to the crux of the matter of this kind of oppression that you might see in these countries as it relates to poverty. So you have these large industrial nations that have essentially shipped their plastics, shipped their refuse to other countries. And these less industrial nations, developing countries, are the countries that really have to deal with the amount of, as the film points out, the amount of plastic pollution that they themselves didn't even cause. So for me, there are issues of justice and equity in regards to how we approach this multifaceted issue. At Oceana, we're looking at the entire life cycle of plastic, even with these chemical companies, petroleum companies, fossil fuel companies, even with offshore drilling in the Atlantic Pacific and Gulf of Mexico, that you approach it, in our estimation, from the source. Why not advocate for policy that just cuts it off right there? We see what's happened off the coast of California, but all of that adds to this greater issue of climate change. And therein, these climate justice issues that less developed countries face as well. So at Oceana, we're looking at this multifaceted approach to fossil fuels by, addressing policy. I mentioned earlier today, we have folks in DC who are working on the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act, working to advocate for the passage of that bill, along with the Reduce Act, plastic polluter fee and budget reconciliation. And then locally here on the ground, we have folks who are working towards plastic-free zones at universities and other places, Tybee Island, where, essentially folks are on the ground in their communities, taking a good look at how plastic impacts their community, analyzing what actually is collected, and developing a system for what works for that community. Every community is not going to be the same. So those are some of the things that Oceana has been working.
Damon, I wanted to chime in here because I think, we've talked about policy, we've talked about recycling. I think one of the things that we haven't really talked about that could round things out, and I think it touches on what Hermina just said, and then also what Dan said, is that there is a growing movement of what we call producer responsibility. So requiring the people who make these single-use plastics to take some responsibility for what they're making. So some of that looks like, Dan mentioned that little like triangle on, you know, the styrofoam that makes everybody think it's really easily recyclable when it's really not. So passing laws that say, you know, if you're going to produce something that's not actually really recyclable, you can't put that little triangle on it. So I think there's a growing movement. And one of the things that I would recommend y'all look into is there are people will do a cleanup and then they'll survey what kind of stuff are they picking up? Who are the people that are producing the trash that they're pulling out of the traps or that they're picking up in the rivers? There's a great group in Gwinnett, Georgia, Gwinnett Recycles, that has done this and has found that Coca-Cola, first of all, is one of the big things that they pull out of the river and out of their, you know, off the side of the roads. But then a lot of the, like QT and a lot of the gas station brands are, you know, the second worst offender. So, and then going to those companies and saying, what are you going to do? So Coke, will you support a bottle bill that would incentivize people actually turning in these plastic bottles? So Dan was talking about the waste stream and how we just are we don't do a good job of cleaning up our recyclables. But if you had a bottle bill, you would be giving people an incentive to actually really take care of their recyclables and turn them in. So bottle bills are when, you know, manufacturer will give you 5 cents for turning in a plastic bottle, for example. There's lots of bottle bills all over the country. There's nothing like that in Georgia, but it's certainly something that we could look at.
Yeah. And I tell that, Jeanette, so actually Coke found out about us. They came to us because of the work we're doing. And so we run a data set and we'll be training Mel and her team. And we call it the Rosetta Stone of litter. It's the ETAP process that EPA did as a draft. And so we capture major types and subtypes. So water bottles are a different class than Coke bottles. Then we capture condition, which tells us a lot about is it an active litter spot or is this an eddy that collects it? And then we capture branding. And I can tell you, Coke has never told us shy away from the branding. We've seen a change in them in the last couple of years. I don't care how we get there, whether they think it's market share down the road or whatever. But we're actually at the new stadium in Birmingham, Alabama right now for the state high school football championships. And my crew is here recycling plastic bottles, collecting them out of the stadium. So I feel good. And I know probably a little bit more than I should know, but yeah, I think the bottle bills, I think, work really well in urban areas that you have population densities. The logistics of bottle bills in rural America, the logistics of hauling is a little complicated. We're hearing some interesting things about making it a positive. We're working with some restaurants back home, though, instead of putting it down. I think the consumers, you know, we're actually, y'all don't steal my ideas here. I didn't sign any confidentiality. We're working on a restaurant app that when you go to a new community, you can actually make your decision based on the higher sustainable restaurants in that community. We've seen a tremendous success in a Ditch the Disposables campaign in Mobile. We went to a place called Big White's Wings. It's a soul food kitchen. Awesome. They got a thing called Stupid Fries, and it's like 18,000 calories. But we did a questionnaire, and people actually said, so, you know, part of the marketing, people say, oh, these disposable versus compostable items are 3 times the cost. Okay, well, let's change our language. So they're 5 cents instead of 1.5 cents. And if I can bring customers to you because you're making that decision and so we're really excited right now that some of that's going into this. They just did another one at a barbecue place, and they're loving it. They're going to change their whole product line over from styrofoam to they're a corn-based item. And I've actually buried some in my compost pile, and I'm going to dig it up in 90 days and see how quick it composts. So to me, this is where you see our motto is what's the action? What you going to do about it? And so playing with this, we're seeing things changing. 4 and 5 years ago, everybody was kind of at each other. And this is, again, back where I come back to where some of our proudest items is we actually have the affiliate of Riverkeeper in Mobile Baykeeper. And a friend of theirs, Dog River Clearwater Revival, had been in lawsuits with the city of Mobile over stormwater litter, you know, and today those groups are actually funding joint projects that we're doing because of the success in the watershed. So I'm super positive about where we're going. And to Hermina's point, back to where we assume, you know, in this country, if you put it in your garbage at your house, it's going to a Subtitle D landfill. It's going to have leachate collection. It's going to have vapor collection. You're going to either have a synthetic liner or 6 feet of 10 to the minus 6 non-permeable clay in that landfill. That's every place in this country regulated. Again, that's not the countries that Hermina's talking about. So, you know, while we're jamming this material down their throat because it's how they are using it, there isn't even an option. We worked with a lady from Papua New Guinea, and the double whammy there was they live out over the saltwater in that community. And they believe still to this day that if a witch doctor can get something that you touched, okay, that's how they can put a hex on you. But salt water is a purifier. So guess what? Anything they drink, if a witch doctor can get that, and there is a landfill and it's up in the mountains that you have to go to, but the local warlord runs it. And so, you know, these are some issues that are so complex, and we're, you know, they're not prepared. I see a bigger need to help in those communities. If we're going to bring it in, we got to bring it out because we are overwhelming with these materials in those communities. We're smart enough in this country. We can get our hand around it because we are pretty blessed. And it's always stuff we have to keep fighting. But most of the world, what they're dealing with, just if we can pay to get it there, we got to figure out a way to get it back. And I think that's where some of the neat things. And again, you know, we're kind of honored to be here with a group like Oceana. These y'all are heavy hitters, and I think they are trying to work out with realistic solutions. But we've got 30 years of a mess. And then another neat thing, I've talked to a group the other day. They're actually buying old landfills to mine the metal out of them because of their economic, and they're also documenting the plastic that's in them. They're not economic today, but they're going to go back in 50 years when the plastic is mineable, you know, when it has a certain value. That's their economic model. So some of that stuff's going on because we've really made a mess of a lot of these beautiful beaches and beautiful countries by just, they do not have the means to transport, recycle, do anything with these materials. So I'm on Hermina's side trying to figure that out.
Yeah, I think it really does go back to that, to the source, like Hermina was saying. I mean, that's where the rubber meets the road, and that's, you know, policy and consumer appetite and pressure, and it's going to be a combination of all these things that are going to finally make a difference. But I'd like to bring it back a little more local, if we can. One thing I think Jeanette reminded me of, and Don too, talking about alternatives to plastic, single-use plastic. What are the alternatives? I know here in Savannah, they did a pilot project with disposable aluminum cups. And I know me personally, when I'm, you know, even buying beer, I'm always like, well, is it, you know, more environmentally friendly to buy glass or aluminum? And I always think aluminum because it tends to get more recycled. But I don't know if that's true or not. That goes back to the education. But what are some of the alternatives from plastic? And you know, is aluminum or wood or paper? You know, when you start talking about paper, then, you know, you start getting into, you know, forestry, deforestation, and that sort of stuff. And then another local issue. Well, let's just go with that. So anybody, and I think Jeanette may know a little more, and I know she worked and was responsible for helping pilot the cup project in Savannah. You know, is that a viable solution to single-use plastic? I mean, does aluminum have a role there? Because I know I've heard some estimation that 90+% of all aluminum that's ever been produced gets recycled, versus, you know, we're at, you know, much lower than that for plastic. So, Jeanette.
Well, maybe Don will disagree with me, but yes, aluminum in general, way easier to recycle.
Okay.
And I mean, the interesting thing about that pilot in Savannah is just talking to the alderman who spearheaded it, is there's a couple things going on. So one is it's much easier for the Public Works Department to collect those aluminum cups and recycle them. Yes, because aluminum recycling is easy to do and actually happens in Savannah. Plastic is a little more touch and go. So that's thing number one. But then thing number two that they've actually found is that people will like hold on to these aluminum cups because they're really cool and really easy to reuse, stick in your dishwasher. And so Public Works is just reporting that they're just finding a lot fewer of these cups. Think about Savannah after St. Patrick's Day, if you've ever been. I mean, it's a nightmare, but they're just finding fewer of these cups that people are just kind of like dropping on the ground. So I think there's a couple of really good things that we're finding out of that experiment. And then, I don't know, I think the good news is we have been kind of addicted to these single-use plastics for only a couple decades. In the scheme of things, like it has not been that long. So I think there are many exciting innovations, some of which have been talked about tonight, that will help people really reduce their reliance on these single-use plastics. I think about another issue that we work on is lead in school drinking water. And one of our solutions to that problem is you should be installing filtration stations. So like those little things that you stick your water bottle in to fill up your water bottle, as opposed to making kids drink out of water fountains. And they've actually done this. So I have a 6-year-old, he attends Atlanta Public Schools, and they've actually done this. So they have filtration stations all over the school. So he takes his water bottle, he fills up his water bottle, it's an aluminum water bottle, he fills it up. And that's how he is learning that's how he gets water all day. And that's what he's learning. He's learning that basically you just have to carry a water bottle around with you all the time. And so I just think about if we could do that in all the schools and all the kids just feel like, that's how things are. I just carry a water bottle around. I think we could do a big thing and change the way our kind of relationship with bottled water, soda, etc. So I do think there are, good news. It doesn't have to be this way. And we, can turn back time pretty easily with some really interesting innovations, I think.
And I totally agree with you, Jeanette. We've got some of those ball cups at the office. We got them and we're checking them out and we're using them. We're 6 months in with the same cups. I recommend, if y'all see this, if y'all just play in the ditches, you find these good stainless cups. My wife hates it when I bring them home and put them in our dishwasher, but that's what we use. But you're exactly right, Jeanette. I think we're totally on board. I think being a scientist, Damon, I'm always going to devil's advocate and figure things out. And I'm a big fan of aluminum. That 90% number is not true because I see so much of it going to the landfill, but it is forever recyclable. Just like with the plastic, like for Coke to meet their goals, we have to recycle, more. It's still, recycling always degrades the material. So we'll never be able to be one-to-one. So we always, is there going to be a better product in 10 years? I hope so. Let's figure it out. We need more aluminum than we are recycling. So we should be more. And that's where, again, sometimes I say, if we had the bottle bills, whatever, and even get the aluminum back, if we could get it back, that's great. But bauxite mining is pretty damaging, which is aluminum is 3 aluminum silicates that they mine from an ore called bauxite. And open pit mining of bauxite is not a pretty thing either. But there's so much aluminum. I mean, you could look at the gas station and look in the trash can at the gas station and it's full of aluminum. And so there's a lot of these groups right now are trying to figure out, one of our clients is, can we put something at gas stations? The gap in all of this has been the labor. There's good ideas, but how do you get it from A to B for these companies that aren't set up? And that's what we do. And so that's what we're working on now, of trying to get it down to that. How do you do these small little things economically so you can do the greater good? And that's what I think some of what Jeanette was talking about. That's where this stuff changes one person at a time, while we have to keep coming up with better long-term solutions. If we need plastic for building space shuttles and and things that aren't single use, and that's where that resource needs to go, and we find other ways to do the single use. These little packets, that movie, it's just a shame. We're seeing so much commingled plastic now, and that is another major issue. And Jeanette, from a big picture standpoint, we're creating a material that's straight to trash. That's what I would go attack. You need to be, building it in and making a level playing ground. But this material, when you layer it, these Capri Suns and stuff like this, you're just making trash. And I think you ought to be shot for putting the symbol on your gear because you have a dream of it being recycled. Somebody asked about glass. Glass is a mess, y'all. I'm just going to tell you. Single stream gets paid by the pound. So if your community does single stream, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but your little town pays whatever between $15 and $22 a ton for that single stream hauler to come get that material. And so they love glass to be recycled because the city's not demanding that their stuff be recycled. They're just paying by the ton. They don't care. They can claim, look what we're recycling. And it's getting to these MRFs that don't have the facilities to do it, and they're landfilling it because they're getting paid by the pound. That's what aggravates me. I would rather be effective for 10% than done correctly than pat yourself on the back for a shadow of recycling. And so that's when we recycle everything we touch. If we're going to count on recycling, we can promise you it did get recycled. There's no hope and dream. This industrial compostable is a lie. There was one facility, I think, in California that's not even in business anymore. And all these alternatives to single use to styrofoam, so much of them are industrial compostable. Some of that acid, that clear stuff they're using, it's just not working. It's something made from corn. We like the bagasse from sugar cane is a great product. But how much sugar cane do we have? We're seeing some neat things with hemp. I love the corn component because of our corn industry. The corn, I believe a lot of it's being made from the leaves and stuff of the corn. So, finding those gaps of this material that we have enough that we don't have to go create a bigger issue someplace else. I love the discussion in there about these plant-based plastics. They're just plastic, folks. It's chemicals. I don't care if it came from a dinosaur or cotton or whatever. A carbon chain is a carbon chain. So just being honest with what we're doing, I think is important. So y'all see, I'm all over the fence. I probably should have been a lawyer because I can and do it, but we're just all about the results and specific, and we like breaking these materials out. That's the problem with glass right now. If you go to your person that's taking glass and ask them, that's what I would say is ask them, tell me where this glass is actually going. Otherwise, you're really part of the problem because you're burning more carbon for them to haul it to a dump, probably in another state when it could have gone to a local spot.
And Don, you just reminded me of the phrase, think globally, but act locally. Yeah. It has so much meaning and so much power and so much impact when we think of, in terms of the amount of carbon emissions that, acting locally would be so much beneficial. And my question is, how do we incentivize this for communities to want to become a part of this? I know that somebody spoke about, Mel, I believe, spoke about, Keep Liberty Beautiful, which is where I am. Many of our counties have these beautification projects. But, even when it comes to the collection, what do you do with what you have collected? So what is the incentive for the community to begin to think about? I saw in the questions, the chat, what are the public health implications of the kinds of plastic that we are collecting and incinerating? And then, not only just the public health aspect, there are communities that are, suffering from respiratory illnesses, skin diseases that they pointed out in the story of plastic. And these are essentially, the most vulnerable communities in most of our societies, women, children, and elders. So, there's a responsibility that, many of you have stated that, these producers have to begin to take on the responsibility of the cost of those public health impact, and that gets into, healthcare issues. But I certainly like the idea of, think globally, but act locally, so that we can, ensure that this planet is sustainable for generations to come.
Thank you, Hermina. And it does seem like our most vulnerable populations are always the one that bear the brunt of our poor mistakes and pollution. Every instance you can think of. So we always definitely need to keep that in mind. I want to circle back to something that Jeanette said that reminded me of Tybee Island and the proposed bag ban that they had back a few years back. I know the city of Savannah, and I think Hermina mentioned some universities are going not outlawing, or going, non-single-use plastic. And I know there was a big controversy on banning bans back when Tybee was trying to do the plastic bag thing. And when you think of policy and things we can do in our watershed, that what always keep coming back to is the counties and municipalities and getting stuff done there. And for the city of Savannah, we have good partners there now that are interested in doing these things and doing the pilot project, the Aluminum Cup. So how do we use this time that we have with the sympathetic government to get some of these policies enacted? And so Jeanette, talk a little bit about the banning of bans and where we're at in the state of Georgia, and the likelihood that a municipality can ban plastic bags or anything. Please.
They can. They can. We won that fight.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
So there was an effort several years ago by they're called the American Chemistry Council. So they represent a lot of the companies that make plastic bags, and they hired a bunch of lobbyists in Georgia and worked to pass a bill that basically said local governments and beyond. It was very far reaching. So I think you could have said local governments, colleges, universities cannot ban, I forget exactly, auxiliary containers is the way they said it, but basically plastic containers. So plastic bags, plastic bottles, plastic cups, etc., styrofoam. And we were able to stop that legislation just barely. It came down to, I think, almost the last day of the legislative session. It was a very close vote, but we were able to stop that. So local governments can indeed. I was mentioning that there are a lot of local governments that have actually taken this step to say, we are going to source our own materials from non-single-use plastic. So I think that's a pretty easy conversation to have, and would be happy to connect any local government that is interested in looking into that with some local governments that have already done that. But there are not as many local governments that have actually said, we're just going to ban plastic bags. So grocery stores, et cetera, cannot hand out a plastic bag. The city of South Fulton is, I think, the only one that I know of that has gone that far. And they, it has not been in effect for very long, but they report great things. And I think there are some really great examples that I'm sure Hermina could talk about even more, of places on the coast in South Carolina that have banned plastic bags, that those bans have been in effect for several years. They can go back and look at data of trash cleanups, et cetera, before the bans and then after the bans, and can point to some real results. So I think it's an idea that hopefully will continue to catch on in Georgia. Don can maybe talk to this, but the recyclers that I know hate plastic bags because they just gum up their machinery. They cause all sorts of problems. They're really hard to recycle. So they're great. Those and styrofoam are probably really good examples of things that are very hard to recycle, and are ubiquitous in the environment. So styrofoam just continues to break down into smaller and smaller pieces, and these plastic bags just stick around forever. So I think they're great targets for for, you know, if you've got a group of really excited activists that want to take this to their local government, I think those are great targets.
Thank you. Hermina, do you have anything to add from what's going on in South Carolina? Was that Surfrider, the group up there that had made some really good progress and along the coast and getting some bans done?
No, you pretty much have hit that point that Surfrider is doing an incredible job on that.
All right. Do we have any more questions in the chat?
I want to tag into Jeanette. That thing, polystyrene, which is the styrofoam, we can't stand it. It degrades so quick, photo degrades, and it's that in the bag. So yeah, y'all probably would have me voting on the bans on those things, because it just really, that styrofoam, you just get to a certain point, you can't get it anymore. The more you touch it, the more it breaks down. And that's just one of those things. I think if we ever could have some alternatives to it, it's still going to be decades. I can go get a Coke bottle or a water bottle 30 years from now. We are able to age our plastic, just being litter nerds. We can tell by the glass and the labeling. And you know, if we're finding pull tab beer cans, we know what year that happened. We know, we're able to figure a lot of that out. And so one of our goals, like we're working a watershed, is we want to really hit that watershed twice a year, because we feel like at least at that point, we can get that material before we start seeing the breakdown of it. Plastic bags break down pretty quickly, but if we can get to that, if we can clean that entire watershed up twice a year, at least we can get to that styrofoam before it starts mechanically degrading. And so that's, we think that's the one item that really is entering every chain we worry about quickly, because of those little white balls and how they do. That's our biggest. When we work with restaurants, if we can get them off the styrofoam, that's our, and another cool thing about our data. So a lot of our brands are national. So I really can't, that lets me maybe go, whoever we're working for, our client owns our data. So when we work with Ogeechee Riverkeeper, our data is coming to you to use with it what you want. We think there's ways for more corporate citizenship opportunities. You go show them, hey, but one thing we like about the local brands, so a gas station, throw away coffee cups and drink cups, Polar Pops, that's Circle K. We can actually do a little bit more watershed dependent data collection to really go find that specific entity in that watershed, because we can actually do volume based on what we find. The Chick-fil-A cups, there's just Chick-fil-A's aren't everywhere. If you find one cup, that's not a smoking gun that you get to go get Chick-fil-A. But if you start finding them, you can actually start tying some of these groups in. First step, so we're about the litter too, is that it is coming from your parking lot. It's not your consumer that left and littered, but you've got a parking lot issue. And so sometimes there's some tools and you'll fix these things one problem at a time. But that's where you can get really specific with your data. Everybody wants to put their name, and we're poking on Coke that they have to get out of the styrofoam business. So if y'all going to try to do what you can with the plastic, you need it. And so the local bottlers, provide those styrofoam cups with Coca-Cola on it. And I said, guys, y'all are losing this one. I can tell you, plastic may survive, styrofoam's not. It's a dinosaur. It's not going to be, something's going to happen with styrofoam. Get your stuff off of it. Well, these gas stations are relying. I said, don't matter. You have got to get out of the styrofoam business. And the neat thing, I don't know if it's official yet, but Coke is getting ready to change. And I'm not here to carry Coke's water, but they're changing the color of the Sprite bottles to clear to make them more recyclable for what they want to do. That's a pretty big change for somebody. I think everybody's got further to go, but those kind of things happening, I think they're waking up. I know it's not going to be at the level everybody wants, but I think it's only going to get better, because this generation that's coming up, they're going to vote. They're going to vote for their politicians, and they're going to vote with their dollars in sustainable issues. And so I liken a lot of this to the smoking campaigns. I mean, I know some of us were kids, man, you get in the car with your dad, your friend of yours dad, and they're smoking in the car with the windows up, and if you did that today, you'd probably arrest the person for doing that. And so I see a lot of this is also the litter component is we're really big on the education and taking this to the schools.
and letting these kids understand what their footprint is. And we do this data with them. And so they can see, yeah, I don't know what happened to the Cheeto bag when I was on the bus. We'll actually pick the litter up around the bus and show them. So I think that's a big piece of it. And timing is everything. And I think it's happening so fast. And I know Jeanette and Hermina got their finger on the pulse. I mean, where we were 6 months ago is different than where we are today. And it's just such a neat. And so one of the things I tell people, the right solution at the wrong time is still the wrong solution. And so some of these ideas that are bubbling up and coming up, it just might be for today. Don't throw it away, save it, bring it back, because, it's again, I think Jeanette's a pro in this. You just keep fighting for what you care about, because it's going to line up. If it's pure and the vision's right, it's going to happen. There's a horrible saying for this little town I was in politicians in, that there were no problems that a few funerals can't solve. And what that meant to me was the younger generation. That's where some of this stuff is going to happen. And that's that little town. It may have meant something else because it was a really pretty rough community, but that's where I think a lot of this is coming, is being honest in the vision, and be specific in your facts, because there's also a lot of people that get turned off if you don't know. It's okay to say, I heard this, just like you, Damon, talking about the aluminum. It's okay to have these. Some people come off so specific about this, and it changes with the market relatively quickly. So.
Good conversation. So one thing that keeps coming up is we're talking about single use, and bags and styrofoam have kind of dominated the single use discussion lately. So if we think about alternatives to bags and styrofoam cups, the first thing that comes to my mind is paper. So wood products, that's the natural alternative to plastic bags. You go back to the paper bags we used to use. I'm old enough to remember when nobody used the plastic bags. But what does, switching back to paper, what does that do to our forests? What does that do to sustainability? What does that do for climate change? And I don't have the answer. I'm asking it in relation to plastic. It's got to be better, but is our disposable culture and reliability on single use, is that like the root of the problem? Should everybody really use reusable grocery bags and carry a bottle of water around? And I mean, that's really the solution. I think. I know forestry, is much more sustainable than, fossil fuel industry, but it certainly has implications for deforestation and climate change. And there's a huge water quality component to have a healthy forest. So I guess in ending, any last comments about that, or anything else anybody else wants to add? If you have a last minute question you've been holding, now's the time to do it. So
modern forestry is agriculture. There's no, and so the beauty of that is the way, like the bags, like get stuff that's not dyed. Even that decision makes it easier to redo it. And so paper is a great recycled product. It's one of the 6 items that has some recyclability right now. And so they're great. And that's a perpetual crop, even though, and like cotton, it's once a year, soybeans are twice a year. It might be a 15 or 17 year crop, but from the benefits of air cleaning and what plants do, you are going to have a perpetual growth of something, So I think that, they're good alternatives. And I guess the only thing I'd say, you got to be real careful. That mom of 6 trying to make groceries at Walmart and telling her what she has to do, that poor woman's stressed. I got twins. I know what that's about. And so I think we have to come up with it. We're all about the reuse bags. I mean, there's just no reason to go in there. And look, I occasionally forget my bags. And for some reason, if I get 6 items, they want to give me 6 bags with my items, and then I got it, I can carry this. And then they got to check your receipt at the door. And so that to me are some of the best things that you can do. It went through a period with COVID, though, you couldn't bring your bags into the grocery store. You had to use their stuff. So it's one of those weird things that we have to be smart about, back to your individual footprint. If you can take care of your footprint and help out your neighbor's footprint, that's how we kind of create this bigger good. But we're a big fan of of the paper and the less dyed. You don't want it, you know, back to where we are from the recycling. If you can match what they're taking to what you're purchasing, but undyed grocery bags are great, and the price is off of them a little bit right now, but we still think that can come back. You know, cardboard, stuff like that's great.
Well, maybe wood is a better alternative for our single use or paper. That certainly seems like it is. Not an expert. Hermina or Jeanette, any parting words of wisdom for us before we thank you so much for your time and expertise and sharing it with us? All right.
Thank you for having me. I think this conversation really proves that there's not a silver bullet solution. It is lots of different solutions, and there's lots of different angles you can work on this issue, but yeah. I think it's great that y'all are focusing on it.
Yeah, Get You River Keeper, we really stepped up our efforts to address plastic pollution over the last year. You know, we started kind of with the Don't Litter Lots project, and going to kick it in higher gear with the Vernon River project. It's just sickening and sad to see the amount of plastic pollution and other litter that makes its way down these drainage canals in Savannah. You can fill up, you know, a boat in a matter of 45 minutes in a 50-yard stretch of the Vernon River with what just gets flushed after every rain. It's very sad. So we're going to continue to focus on you know, preventing litter, getting it before it gets into the marsh and our waterways. But we're also going to ramp up our education and outreach efforts. And I'm very interested in talking more with you guys about some local efforts to curb, you know, single-use plastic, you know, being bought and that sort of stuff too. So thank you guys so much. This has been a great discussion. And thank you everybody who came and showed up tonight. You know, if you know somebody that's going to be interested in this, we're going to be sharing the video through our social media channels and our YouTube channel so they can watch it later. Thank you all so much.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a wonderful holiday season, everyone.
Yes. And thank you for your support of ORK. We couldn't do it without you guys. Yep. See you guys soon. Goodbye.